The champagne was already on ice in the boardroom of Auratech, the company I had built line by line, night after night, in a cramped garage smelling of burnt solder and stale coffee. Today was the day. A $200 million acquisition by Global Nexus was set to close at 4 p.m. I sat in the back corner, wearing a hoodie that cost $20, while my wife, Elena, stood at the head of the table in a $2,000 power suit. To the world, she was the visionary genius. To the investors, she was the face of Auratech. My social anxiety had been the perfect excuse for her to step into the spotlight while I stayed in the shadows, writing the soul of the company. To the future of Auratech, the lead investor toasted, looking directly at Elena. To the future, Elena smiled, her eyes glittering with a cold light I hadn't seen before. She didn't look at me, not once. As the investors filed out to prepare the final wire transfer, I walked up to her. "We did it, Elle. We can finally disappear. Buy that house in Switzerland. No more servers, no more stress." Elena set her glass down with a sharp clink. She turned to me, and the warmth she had practiced for the cameras vanished. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thick blue folder. "Actually, Mark, there's been a change of plans. I'm filing for divorce, and you're not going to Switzerland." I felt the air leave my lungs. "What? Is this a joke?" "The joke is that you thought I needed you," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The board just signed the final ownership disclosures. I submitted the paperwork identifying myself as the sole founder and intellectual property owner. You're listed as a third-party technical consultant whose contract was terminated this morning." "I wrote every line of the core algorithm, Elena. You don't even know how to reset the router," I hissed, my heart hammering against my ribs. "And who's going to believe you?" she laughed, leaning in close. "The world knows me. The patents are in my name. The press releases call me the Queen of Tech. You're just a guy with a panic disorder who lives in a basement. I've already had your security badge deactivated. Security is on their way up to escort you out of my building." "You're stealing my life," I whispered, the room starting to spin. "I'm taking what I earned by putting up with your social awkwardness for 10 years, she snapped. "Go back to your garage, Mark. I've left a suitcase for you at a motel. Don't bother coming home." 2 guards appeared at the door. As they grabbed my arms, Elena turned back to her mirror to touch up her lipstick, looking at the multi-million-dollar woman she had become on the back of my labor. But as they dragged me toward the elevator, I stopped struggling. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 3:45 p.m. "Elena!" I shouted. She paused, looking bored. "I hope you checked the sustainability clause in the software's architecture before you sold it." "I don't need to read code to spend the money, Mark," she sneered. The elevator doors closed on her smirk. She didn't know that Auratech wasn't just a program. It was a living thing, and I was its heart. She had just cut the heart out, and in 15 minutes, the Queen of Tech was going to realize she had sold a ticking time bomb to the most dangerous investors in the world. My fingers flew across the keys. I wasn't trying to hack back into the main server. Elena's new security team would be watching for that. No, I was accessing a back door I had built during the very first week in the garage. I called it the Ghost Protocol. While Elena was busy posing for a Forbes digital cover, I was watching the global Nexus wire transfer progress. $200 million. It was pending. it would hit her account at midnight. Suddenly, my screen flickered. A notification popped up from the Auratech internal Slack. Elena had forgotten to remove my administrative access to the general channel. I watched the messages roll in. Has anyone seen the founder? She's locked in the CEO suite with the Global Nexus lawyers. The buyers are asking for the final decryption keys for the Aura core. They want to start the integration at 6 p.m. I smiled. The Aura core was the crown jewel, the AI that could predict market fluctuations with 99% accuracy. It was also the part of the code that contained the kill switch. In the software's DNA, there was a biometric handshake. Every 6 hours, the system looked for my unique pulse and retinal signature via the webcam of the lead developer's workstation. If the system didn't detect me, or worse, if my user ID was deleted, it didn't just stop working. It began a recursive encryption loop. It would turn itself into digital gibberish, essentially dying and taking every bit of data with it. Elena had deleted my ID at 3:30 p.m. The countdown had begun. I opened a secure, untraceable chat window and sent a message to a contact I'd made years ago in the deep tech forums. A man known only as the Eraser. The asset is hot. The buyer is Global Nexus. I need a clean exit and a new identity in 48 hours. Payment is in the encrypted backup, I typed. Global Nexus, the Eraser replied instantly. Mark, you're playing with fire. Those aren't just investors. They're a front for a private equity firm that manages money for some very impatient people in Eastern Europe. If that software fails after they pay, they won't just sue Elena. They'll erase her. I know, I replied. That's the point. I spent the next 3 hours watching the clock. At 5:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Elena. Elena, the buyers are complaining about a latency issue in the core. What did you do? You pathetic loser. Fix it. Now. I'll give you 1% of the sale if you make it go away. I didn't reply. I watched the Ghost Protocol dashboard. The Aura core was now 40% encrypted. To anyone looking at the interface, it looked like a minor bug. But deep in the architecture, the walls were closing in. At 6:15 p.m., my phone rang. It was a blocked number. I answered. Mark? It was Elena. Her voice wasn't cold anymore. It was shrill, teetering on the edge of a panic attack. Mark, listen to me. The lead investigator for Global Nexus, a man named Victor, is standing right here. He says the system it's deleting itself. He thinks I'm trying to scam them. I'm just a low-level consultant, Elena, I said, my voice eerily calm. I don't have the authority to fix the Queen of Tech's software. Mark, please. He's not a normal businessman. He's saying if the core isn't functional by midnight, the deal is off, and there will be consequences. He's looking at me in a way that, Mark, I'm scared. You should be, I said. You sold them a ghost, Elena. And ghosts have a habit of haunting people. Fix it. I'll give you half. $100 million, she screamed. It's not about the money anymore, I said, looking at the motel's peeling wallpaper. It's about the fact that you thought you could delete me. But in the digital world, I'm the only thing that's real. I hung up. I looked at my laptop. The encryption was at 85%. In less than an hour, the $200 million product would be a useless pile of code. Elena was trapped in a glass office with men who didn't take kindly to being cheated. But then, the motel room door rattled. Not a knock, a heavy, rhythmic thud. "Open up, Mark," a deep, gravelly voice commanded from the hallway. "Mr. Victor wants to have a word about his investment." Elena hadn't just betrayed me. She had pointed the monsters right at my door to save herself. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the encrypted backup drive, the soul of Auratech, and slid it into the hidden compartment of my backpack. The door rattled again, the frame beginning to splinter. "I know you're in there, little coder," the voice growled. "Don't make this messy." I didn't have a weapon, but I had the motel's ancient Wi-Fi and a pre-written script. I hit enter on my laptop. Suddenly, every fire alarm in the motel began to scream. I jumped out the bathroom window, just as the front door gave way with a deafening crash. I scrambled into the shadows of the alleyway, to my heart drumming against my ribs. I could see two hulking figures in dark suits silhouetted in my motel room window. They were fast, but I was in my element now. The dark, the cold, and the hunt. I hopped into a pre-booked rideshare 3 blocks away. Auratech headquarters, I told the driver, and step on it. If I was going down, I was going to watch the empire crumble in person. I arrived at the glass tower at 11:30 p.m. The lobby was eerie, the usual neon Auratech logo flickering and dim. The kill switch was at 98%. The entire system was becoming a black hole. I bypassed security using a physical hardware bypass I'd hidden in the lobby's smart planter months ago. I took the service elevator to the penthouse. When the doors opened, the scene was pure chaos. Elena was backed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, to her face pale and streaked with mascara. Standing in front of her was Victor, a man who looked like he was carved out of granite, wearing a suit that cost more than my first 3 cars. His 2 bodyguards stood by the door, their hands inside their jackets. "The wire transfer is scheduled for midnight, Elena," Victor said, his voice a terrifyingly soft purr. "But my engineers say they are looking at a graveyard. You sold us a corpse." "It's Mark. It's his fault," Elena shrieked, pointing a trembling finger as I stepped out of the elevator. "He's the one. He's doing this. Make him stop it." Victor turned. His eyes were like flint. "So, the low-level consultant arrives. Tell me, Mark, why am I about to pay $200 million for a pile of encrypted garbage?" "Because," I said, stepping into the center of the room, my voice finally steady, "the woman you're dealing with doesn't own the code. She doesn't even understand it. She tried to delete the only person who can keep the heart beating." I turned my laptop toward Victor. The screen showed the biometric required prompt. A pulsing red countdown. 0 hours, 2 minutes, 14 seconds. "At midnight, the encryption becomes permanent," I said. "Not even I will be able to reverse it. The product you want, the market predictor, will be gone forever. And Elena's bank account will stay empty." "Fix it," Elena screamed, lunging toward me. Victor's bodyguard caught her by the arm and threw her back like a rag doll. "You have 2 minutes, Mark," Victor said, checking his watch. "Fix the code, and you walk away with the money. Don't fix it. And I let my associates decide what to do with both of you." I looked at Elena. She was shivering on the floor, looking at me with a mixture of terror and pathetic greed. She still thought there was a way she could win. "I'm not fixing it, Victor," I said. The room went silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to stop. "What did you say?" Victor whispered. "I'm not fixing this version. I said, holding up the encrypted backup drive from my bag. I'm taking the real Auratech with me. This server, it's a decoy now. Elena signed over the intellectual property of a dead system. She committed fraud the moment she told you she was the sole founder. You're tanking the deal, Elena gasped. You're destroying $200 million. No, I smiled, looking at the clock. 000005. 000004. I'm destroying your deal. 000000. The monitors in the room suddenly turned a flat, cold blue. A single line of text appeared on every screen in the building. System deleted. Owner not found. The $200 million acquisition vanished into the digital ether. The queen of tech was now just a woman who had scammed a group of very dangerous men out of a massive amount of time and resources. Victor's face went dark. He didn't even look at me. He turned his gaze toward Elena. She lied about the ownership, Victor said to his men. She wasted our time. She tried to steal from us. Mark, help me, Elena begged, reaching for my hand. I stepped back, the elevator doors opening behind me. I'm just a consultant, Elena, and my contract just ended. As the doors closed, the last thing I saw was Victor stepping toward Elena, and the look of absolute soul-crushing horror on her face as she realized that without my code, she was nothing but a target. I didn't stay in the city. By the time Victor's men realized I hadn't just deleted the code, but had also routed their earnest money deposit into a series of untraceable cold wallets, I was already across the state line. A week later, I sat in a quiet library in a town whose name I'll never reveal. I opened a burner phone to check the headlines. I didn't have to look far. Auratech founder Elena Miller charged with massive securities fraud, company assets seized. The news was a bloodbath. When the global Nexus engineers realized the software was unsalvageable, they didn't just walk away. They handed over every piece of evidence they had to the SEC, and some things that weren't strictly legal, to ensure Elena never saw the light of day. Since she had signed the ownership papers as the sole creator, she was legally responsible for the faulty product. She was facing 20 years for fraud, but that was the least of her problems. I scrolled down to a smaller, darker headline. Disgraced tech CEO hospitalized after accidental fall in holding cell. Victor had sent a message. Even behind bars, Elena wasn't safe. She had tried to play with the big boys using a deck of cards I had printed. And now she was paying the debt in blood. She had wanted to be the face of the company. Now, that face was bruised and hiding in a protective custody wing. I pulled out the encrypted backup drive, the true, living Auratech. I sent one final email to the board of directors of Global Nexus, specifically to Victor's private server. The software you bought was a shell. The engine is with me. If you want to recoup your losses, I've set up a new company, Ghost Code Solutions. I don't want $200 million. I want a 10% royalty on every transaction, paid in Bitcoin, and a guarantee that your associates never look for me again. You get the best market predictor in history. I get my piece. 10 minutes later, the reply came. Agreed. Don't make us come looking for an update. I spent the next month rebuilding. My social anxiety didn't vanish, but the fear did. I bought a small house by a lake, far from the glass towers and the fake smiles of the tech world. I didn't need a face for my company anymore. I was a ghost, and ghosts are much harder to kill. One evening, I received a collect call from a women's correctional facility. I knew it was her. I let it ring and ring and ring. Then I blocked the number. I sat on my porch, the laptop glowing in the twilight. I wasn't the queen of tech, and I wasn't a low-level consultant. I was the man who wrote the rules. Elena wanted a life without me. Now, she had exactly that. A cold, cramped life where no one knew her name, and no amount of lipstick could hide the truth of what she'd lost. I hit the execute key on my new project. The code began to run, perfect and silent.